We're the Knicks.
Hey there, welcome to ATL and 29, a podcast that looks at the NBA from the starting point of Atlanta. My name is Kevin Chenard. I'm here with Glenn Willis and Tyler Jones. And Glenn, do you give the Knicks permission to interview Tyler?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Tyler is a wealth of information, and anyone should go to him for advice, perspective. I wholly support that.
I'd take the job. It's a well-paid job. I mean, I'd lose it within, before training camp started, but I'd absolutely take the job. That's good money. So, yeah, no, the Knicks. I think they got a little bit ahead of their skis when they fired Tom Thibodeau and didn't have a plan in place. Seems like it was more of an emotional decision by the owner. Maybe is what happened ultimately, but you know, that's their troubles, not the Hawks, because the Hawks said no, thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting that the Knicks wanted to interview Quinn Snyder. That seems to be the news of the hour. Is there anything else we really need to say about this? I mean, the Hawks said no. There's not a whole lot to it, I guess. Anything
Dallas said no. Hey,
I
the whole league is like, we are not here to serve the Knicks. Like that is not what's going to happen here.
Yeah, I mean they'd have like it's one of those things where unless the Knicks are willing to give up like real draft pick compensation, like real compensation, then no team is just going to hand them their head coach, allow them to even talk to their head coach, without filing a tampering claim. So that's pretty much where the Knicks stand. I don't think the Knicks have any picks, so I'll be like, no thanks.
All right, yeah. So the guess they'll have to put together a Brinks truck for Jay Wright or something. I don't know.
I mean, they could just hire Taylor Jenkins, but
They could. All right. So draft picks. What do you think about Derek Queen? Just kind of throwing a name off the list here.
I uh the opinion changes depending on if you're watching offense or defense, I guess. Offensively, he's really good offensively. A very good driver of the basketball at his size is just such a weapon for teams. I understand he doesn't have elite center size, but it's okay for the position. But like, and so I could see him struggling sometimes to finish over like elite length, but like his ability, I mean, his ball handling ability to get to his spots and to create, advantageous situations for himself and his teammates. Like just so few guys his size have that in his frame where he's a wider body player. He's able to knock guys back. He's able to get to either hand and finish through contact. Like that would be a real weapon for the Hawks combined with his ball skills, his passing. There's some stuff he'd have to clean up offensively, but like he's a really talented player, without question. The issue is his defense, and like you already have a Kongu on the roster, and so are we going to double up with two bigs? Who Kongu's so much better defensively though, but like the point is two bigs who are like relatively the same height. You're not getting any like diversity in what you can do defensively with those two guys. So it's something you'd have to consider. At the same time, you could make an argument that Queen probably his best position is power forward position anyway, and he'd be that hybrid 4 or 5 that the Hawks have kind of missed since they let John Collins go for nothing. So like that could be a real weapon for them. Nas Reed is going to make a lot of money in that role, and he's been a really good basketball player. And I think that's something Queen could do for the Hawks. I don't know if I see a star upside with him just because he doesn't have that elite physical profile that you would need for his play style, but he has a really good one. And like he could wreck a lot of like skinny bigs, slower bigs, uh, bigs who aren't well coordinated. Like he can really take advantage as well as like taking advantage of any player who doesn't have the frame to match up with him in the post is getting cooked. Like they're just getting put under the basket, and it's an easy layup, and it's going to force a double team. So it's going to make teams you can't switch. Trey Young pick and rolls with him just because like you put a small player on him, it's over, and he's very good at sealing his guys. So like a lot of positives on the offensive end. The defensive end is where the real concern lies.
Glenn, what's his NBA position?
Yeah, I mean, I think he mostly plays the four. I think, but I think, more and more, I think you're seeing like in these playoffs, we've talked about it here on the pod before, like a lot of teams are going four guards and a quasi big, and so the flexibility I think is there for him to kind of fit into different configurations. I do think offensively he has good instincts. He has some good skill there, but once you get to the middle of the first round, in a lot of draft classes, you're really kind of talking about, I know a little bit of a repeat for you, but like an offensively oriented player that we feel like we can teach him to play enough defense, or a defense first player that we can feel like we can get him to be good enough on offense. And there's nothing wrong with either of those profiles, so long as you feel like in your development ecosystem you can kind of get that player where he needs to be. But I love his offensive instincts, for sure. It's just a matter of, can you get him to work defensively? And he has enough natural athleticism that, you know, with the right kind of uh training and development context, maybe he's good enough there.
If is there a potential for him to maybe change his body a little bit? Like, is there some untapped explosiveness that he can get to, do you think?
Maybe, but honestly, even more than that, changing his frame, he's got to play harder on the defensive side of the floor. He plays too lax on that end, and he's not going to be good enough offensively to be that type of defender. And I think that's his biggest issue right now is where it's like beyond like yes, he can I think he can work on his body, but I don't know if it's gonna unlock anything more as he'll be able to play for longer stretches and be more consistent and give more consistent effort. But defensively, he just has flat out like he's got to play harder with more effort, with more intensity, especially if he's going like if the Hawks were to take him, he's not seeing the floor unless he plays hard. Like that's just that's just the reality. Even though he has some very good things he can do some very good things for the Hawks on the offensive end. He'd be he'd be like a luxury pick. I would like if he's there at 13, I would have no problem with the Hawks taking him, but they just need to understand, like, fans need to understand he's probably not going to play NBA minutes to start his career, even though offensively I think he's ready to contribute. It's just like the defense. It's too much of me watching him not compete on that and like at the NBA level, not even the greatest, possibly one of the greatest offensive bigs of all time can get away with not competing on the defensive side of the floor. Like that's just that position at both power forward and center. If you're a big, you got to play with effort and intensity, or you're just gonna it's just gonna be a layup line for the other team. NBA offenses are just too advanced.
I like to drive around with my windows down a lot, and like sometimes you'll be sitting at a red light, and some electric cars and some hybrids, like they go all the way down to nothing and you can't hear them. And when they hit the gas, they just start right away. But then there's like these cheap, clunky hybrids that like you got to hit the gas and you hear like the whole engine turn over. You're starting a car just to get out of a red light. And he's like that. Like when he's off the ball on defense, it's like it takes him like a whole second to just kind of get out of like whatever slumpy posture he's in and start to go get somewhere. It's like it's like just a stance or a readiness that's missing.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
compare his defensive effort to like someone like a Cardwell from Auburn, who might be a UFA target for the Hawks. And it's like he has a similar physique to Derek Queen.
Mhm.
And honestly, I think Queen could get there. But Cardwell doesn't have the offensive gifts. That's why he's not going to be drafted probably. But like defensively, that's what Queen needs to play like, or he needs to play with that level of intensity if he wants to maximize his ability to affect winning at an NBA level. There's no question in my mind. He goes to a bad team, he's going to be really good. He's going to put up a lot of numbers. But to get to even Sangoon's level, like Sangoon works his butt off. Like you watch the playoffs against him in the entirety of the playoffs against the Warriors and against against the Warriors,
Just the
they got
Warriors.
bounced. Like Sangoon's working his butt off to get to his spots, to take stuff away from the Warriors, to not just give up the easy stuff. He knows every team wants to put him in every action, and he's working, fighting, competing, and like he was to me, I thought he was really good defensively in that series, and he was really impressive to me on that end of the floor. And like that's the level of intensity all bigs have to play with, whether you're good or bad. You just have to play hard. That is a mandatory thing now in the NBA today. Like the era of the elite offensive big just not playing hard is just not happening anymore.
Glenn, do you want to talk about Derek Queen? You want to move to a new player? How do you feel here?
Yeah, we can move on.
Okay. How about Maxime Renault?
I mean, he's an interesting guy. He's a big with some offensive skill. I feel like he's a guy who maybe some fans have seen like 10 highlights of him attacking the rim, putting the ball on the floor, you know, and think he's gonna be given that kind of role in the NBA from the beginning, and I mean he is pretty offensively skilled for a guy his size, right? But sometimes I feel like you watch him as like, man, when he like attacks the rim, he's in space, not dealing with the body, getting like going off 2 feet, and that's the big difference between that and a player who can play through a defender at the rim,
Yeah,
and things like that. So a little similar to Queen in that the questions are on the defensive side of the floor, but he plays hard. I mean, he plays hard. He competes. I'll give him that. At 13, I think it's a ridiculous thought. At 22, depending upon who else is on the board, if you feel like you can kind of, give him a year in the G League to kind of learn how to really play team defense and things like that, I think it could be okay. I hope they have better options there, but I wouldn't hate it at 22, I guess, depending upon kind of who else is still there.
What do you think,
I
Tyler?
like him. I like him. Um, I told Brad about this. Who he reminded me of? He reminds me a lot of like Mike Muscala. Uh, really on both ends of the floor, especially as a younger player, where like he does a lot of good. Like he does it. I feel like he does everything that you want a big to do, but what he lacks is like the raw physicality. Like any even on the offensive side of the floor, anytime he feels contact, he's throwing up a weak soft hook shot. Uh, and so like to me, he's just not gonna he's not gonna get all these post ups. He's not gonna be taking these hook shots and floaters because he's not efficient. Like he's not a that level of talent, offensive talent. However, the shooting, like if you're take to me, you can only justify taking him at 13 if you think he can be a full-time center 100% of the time. Because like the shooting is like, I think it could be special at the center position.
Yep.
Um, he took 10 threes per 100 possessions as a like playing pure center. Like that is unreal. And you watch the film, he's getting them up. Like he gets them up. He works to get them up. He doesn't hesitate. He has a slower release. That's why maybe power forward might. I think he can play some power forward, but you're losing that real shooting advantage. Because like to me, his trait is going to be I'm in the NBA. If a center's guarding me and I'm the shooting big, I can spot up 26, 27 feet away from the rim and can open 3 pointers from deep range because I think he has that type of shooting talent. Uh, I'm with Glenn. 13 is too high, but the skill level is there, and he has great size. Like he's legit 7 footer, uh, good standing reach. Not a great wingspan though. A little slight. Wonder if he can put on some more muscle mass, but I don't see him ever being. I don't think he has the athleticism to be a physical force the way that even Porzingis is now. Like I just don't like Porzingis is just a better athlete overall than Maxine, but there's a lot to like with Maxine and like him at center if you're playing 5 out basketball, that could be a real offensive like juggernaut lineups where he's forcing teams to mix up their matchups just because you can't put a center on them. And like that's a win for the Hawks because like if you got to put your center on like a Jalen, we cooking. We're Jalen's able to like just go by the guy. You're just able to do more stuff with somebody like Maxime. I think the Hawks have the personnel to support him as a center on defense just because of how they play defense now. But he has to work on his game on that side of the floor. Though he does the baseline stuff of playing hard. It's just like I don't know if he has the strength to hold up at the center position. Like if you're asking him to play 30 plus minutes a game. I think for 15, 10 minutes a night, I think you can get away with it. And that could be a real weapon off your bench. So I like at 22, I'd have no problem with the Hawks taking him there, but 13 is a little rich.
I mean, if you're playing a big, I mean, part of it's obviously you want somebody who can defend. Like, let's talk a little bit more about that side of the ball. Like, what does he do well now, and what are the sorts of things that he can potentially, uh, have reasonable expectation to add to his game?
I mean, the thing that we've emphasized here is that it is hard to find guys his size that can do what he can do in offense. That is hard to that is really, really, really hard to find. And that's where you have to, I feel like in interviews, like in background checks, like does he work hard? Is he coachable? Does he compete? Is he willing to kind of really put in the effort to advance himself enough defensively that we don't have to just outright take him off the floor and have to matchups that we're in, and that's the key there is can you get him to do those things? If you can even get him to a slight even almost average defender, if he tops out, if he hits his kind of semi-peak offensive ceiling, that's a good player to have, especially if he's your backup center or whatever it might be. So because I mean, it's funny how I feel. I don't know how like listeners are there a lot of listeners that watched the whole Brook Lopez journey? Because like his first 5 to 6 years in the league, he could not defend to save his life,
Right.
and wasn't really physical and kind of came in as a finesse player. And something clicked along the way, and he turned into a guy who's super competitive, super physical, and became just a guy that unlocks a lot of stuff, right? And so when I think back on that, it's like guys have done that before. Now, if you read about Brooke Lopez, his like personality, he is fiercely competitive, like fiercely, fiercely, fiercely competitive. I don't know, and that's what I think where I think you have to check in to see is that fire there that you can kind of get a guy to really kind of move along in a similar journey. Now, Brooke Lopez was, I don't know, for 3 years one of the most impactful defensive centers in the 3, 4, 5 years, whatever the range was, right? And so I don't really want to put that out there for a guy like him. But I'm just saying you can look back at examples of guys who came in the league that struggled to defend for a good 4 or 5 years and then figure it out.
I,
And that's I think the thing that I'm curious about with him.
I mean, Glenn, we can look to the Hawks like Mo Gay from when the Hawks drafted him defensively. He wasn't what he was to end the season last year. So I think there is some upside with him just because he has the size and he's not Mo Gay level athlete, but he is a good athlete. For to me, his bigger issue is his raw lack of physical strength combined with the you know reduced athleticism. Like Mo is like top tier athlete, so he can get away with being a weaker player. Maxime's not that level of athlete, and he's pretty weak for his size. Like I know he's listed at 230, but you watch the tape, it's like I mean you can very clearly see he's getting knocked back way too much. If you're asking him to be your like primary rim protector, which I don't think any team would. So and like the Hawks would because they have again Hawks don't play defense like that, particularly with their big. So it I think it'd be a good honestly I think it'd be a good like culture team fit overall because he seems like a great guy, and I think he's a hard worker. Like he only started playing basketball as a 16 when he was 16 years old, and like from being a swimmer. So like he's coming from complete scratch, similar profile to what Mo did as a younger athlete. So he like I said, I'd have no problem with him at 22. I don't see. I don't. I think he can get to where Mike Muscala got as a defensive player, like where it's good in small bursts, but if you have him out there too long or certain lineups, like you can really see the lack of physical strength really hurt your team. But if you he to me, he'd be a player I would love for the Hawks to have because the shooting, again, like I'm like you want to look if I'm the Hawks, I want to win some games. I get size with shooting, and we start just running teams out the gym. Combined with like if Mo Gay's improvement on defensive end is real, like you can do some interesting stuff with the Hawks. Running some interesting lineups with certain bigs with certain skills. So like I think he could be a piece, but I don't see him being a starter level player in the NBA just due to the fact that it the NBA, regardless of what people casual fans think, the NBA is super physical. Like it's just a super physical sport, especially for the bigs. Uh, like if you're not able to hold your weight down low, you're just getting thrown, and they're not calling. Refs aren't calling fouls for you being the weaker player. So that's where I can see him struggling. But like I like him. So 22, no problem.
Yeah, I like his agility. I think that gives him a good baseline. There are a lot of bigs in this draft where it's like, no, he just like okay, he's tall, but like if he could just can't move at all, like it's just not going to work at the NBA level in a lot of cases. And I feel like, yeah, I'm with you. He doesn't look like an NBA starter to me, but just the agility and the shooting and the size, like plus he's a math major. You put all that together, you got something you can work with. Um,
Kevin's got a special place in his heart for
yeah,
math.
we gotta protect the math majors. Um, how about Coward?
He's interesting.
He's
Um,
interesting. Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
when I think about him, it makes me think about Darius Garland, who didn't play a lot his 1 year at Vanderbilt. And what do you do with that? What do you make of that? But I mean, his physical profile is outlier. There's just a lot of outlier kind of characteristics that are there. He plays hard. He's had a good reputation for that along the way, and it's just hard to find guys his size that can move the way he moves. If you go back and watch some of his play, what bit there is to watch, needs to improve his ball handling, for sure. That's not unusual for a guy, kind of coming out of college, a big guy in college, maybe get that opportunity a lot. Um, but I mean, if you read, what the people who really study, Sam Vecini, other like the guy works, and so why can't he, really kind of move the needle offensively enough to kind of give you what you need? But he's another guy that like you just look at what he gives you in size, profile, and all that stuff, and it's hard to find guys. It's hard to find guys who bring that to the table. Um, so I think he's really intriguing, really, really intriguing.
Like natural jump shooter is probably maybe the best way I can put it, where it just feels like every time he puts the shot up, it's going in. And he jumps like he actually jumps on his jump shot. Like a lot of players have set shots now just because I think it's easier for them to make be more consistent. He jumps and he gets up and like he can shoot over a contest because like he has like outlier wingspan, good size, uh, sneakily, well, not so sneakily. Like he's a great post player too, especially with smaller basketball players. You put a point guard size player on him, it doesn't matter who they are. He's just rising over the top and shooting over them. Like he, I have no issue with the Hawks taking him at 13 at all, just because um, like to me, his shot profiles as somebody who, if he can improve defensively, because I think he works hard, but like he has some fundamental stuff he needs to work on the defensive side of the floor. Not say he can't get there, but he's more like toolsy than like impact defender. But I think in the Hawks, you get him in the Hawks system, I have no doubt in my mind that considering the worker that he is, they'll turn him into a very, very good defender. But like to me, the jump shot is like he can make 300 threes in a season levels of like there's just not that many NBA players who can rise like he can. And there's some like I feel like there's some untapped upside that he was actually tapping into this season because you watch the Eastern Washington tape. It was a lot more catch and shoot, catch and drive, which is what the Hawks want. Like he was actually doing what the Hawks wanted, how they want to play offense at Eastern Washington before he went to Washington State the year later. But it was lower level competition. Like he was the biggest guy on the floor a lot of the time. So it's one of those things where you're going to have to see him in workouts, see how get to know him a bit more. But with the tools that he has and like the production, I can't stress about the shooting. Like he had a for his college career, which was 2 years at Eastern, 3 years at Eastern Washington. One was he didn't play that much his freshman year, and then 1 year at Washington State where he unfortunately only played 6 games due to injuries. Like career true shooting percentage over like 70%, like unheard of levels of elite efficiency. Uh, and it shows up on tape. Like guys can't bother him because he's so, and so like the Hawks, what makes him enticing for the Hawks when you have somebody like Trey Young, he's somebody. If he's on the floor with Trey, you can't just put a smaller defender on him because he'll shoot over the top. Similar to Reese Shea, like he'll shoot over the top, and he can hurt you in the post. In the post because he's again, like I said, he's a great post player. Like hard to like switch on somebody who has these outlier traits. So like to me, he's somebody who you'd have to if he's there at because I could see a scenario where a team poaches him even before 13. But if he's there at 13, you have to at least consider it because I don't think he's going to be there at 22. I just think he has too much steam. I think a lot of teams are seeing the same stuff with him as a person and as a basketball player because by all accounts, like his workouts, he's just like teams are coming away wowed by his explosiveness, which you know you're not sure is going to translate from the lower levels of college and like the lower levels of D1, which he played. He has a unique background. Came from D3. He started D3 unscholarshiped, basketball player to getting a scholarship at Eastern Washington to make it to Washington State. He was going to go to Duke, uh, but the feedback was just too good. Like every team was like, "Yeah, you're a first rounder guaranteed, and like you might go lottery." So that's why he didn't know because if he wouldn't have went to Duke, he probably would have been in the lottery again. Even though he'd have been an older player, but like I think he would have been really good at Duke as well, and that would have just made people suspicion that he was a good prospect to certainty. So he's coming out now, and hopefully, I think the Hawks, like if he's there at 13, they should take the flyer on him.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting to quickly, Kevin, contrast him with Murray Boyles, right? I mean, he gives you more two ways upside, where Murray Boyles is the defensive upside. It's just been interesting to see how teams that are picking, say, 7 through whatever it is, how they value that or not.
yeah, exactly. I mean, though, of the players that could reasonably be there at 13, those are the two that, I would personally be like, oh, yeah, they made a good pick. Like, in the case of Coward, like, when I look at a draft, one of the things that I do in trying to compare the players is like, okay, as you watch what their profile, what their portfolio is, who's the one who's most likely to have like a 15-year NBA career? Like forget like ceiling and accolades, like who's just the one who's just he's going to be around for a long time. And you don't know with Coward about the injury thing necessarily. I mean, like, we don't. I maybe the teams get the injury reports and they do their own investigations and whatnot. But like, if the labrum thing is fine, like to me, he seems like one of the players in this draft who I feel like, yeah, he's going to be around in 15 years because like his physical profile is pretty incredible. Just because like he's so fluid and he has such a big frame, but he's also a good shooter. Like usually when you have these players who have, a wingspan that far exceeds their height, there's not a lot of them that look like they can be great shooters. Like there's just something about that extra wingspan. It gets a little bit janky with the elbows and the arms. And when you watch Coward shoot, like he looks like a completely natural, fluid jump shooter, like Tyler was talking about. But then there's that potential, just given his physical gifts, that he could also be a really good defender because he seems to be a reasonably good athlete. You watch his frame. To me, when I was watching those, his games, as he moves around the court, he kind of looks a little bit like Luke Baamute in terms of his size. Like there's just not a lot of players that are like 6'7", but also have the kind of wingspan that he does with a big frame to go with it. Like he's really got a toolkit that seems like something to build with. And to me, like when I'm looking at the players thinking of who would I want the Hawks to take, like he's way up there.
I mean, the more you watch, you're like, one of the things I'm like, how did it take so long for teams to, D1 programs to recognize, this level of talent? Honestly, he
Yeah,
wasn't this in high school, and I think it speaks to he wasn't this good in high school. Like he wasn't as good his earlier, his
right.
freshman year or he got there when he showed it was like, I'm just, physically imposing. He might have had a growth spurt. I actually don't know about that, but like it's kind of shocking when you watch him, you see how polished he is. Like even his pull up, jump shots where he gets in the lane, he has like a nice like shot fake into a fadeaway mid ranger. That's just not. You're like, this is high level skill. Not many even NBA players have this in their toolbox. And so like I just think like again, 13, I couldn't you couldn't ask for a better pick if he's there or if CMB is there. Like that's a coin flip pick to me. I would love either one of those two guys. So like those are the two guys I have the least questions about, where I'm not concerned about this or that. Like I'm not concerned about their athleticism. I'm not concerned about their work rate. I'm not concerned about their effort level. Like they do everything the right way. They seem like great guys based on everything I've read about both of them. I just think they would if the Hawks can come away with one of those two guys, like I'm ecstatic for what the Hawks are doing next season because like I think that they can be really additive talents to an already pretty talented basketball team.
And with Coward, like he's an older player, but he didn't start playing like I think really serious competitive basketball until he was older. So like, the drawbacks maybe of looking at an older player playing against like I don't this doesn't seem like he has necessarily all the I'd be less worried about taking him as an older player versus taking some other players as an older player. And what one of the things that to me like sort of stood out was like, okay, he's a right-handed shooter. Teams when they close out, they're going to close out to his right hand. He seems very comfortable like pulling it down and going left off of a closeout. Like
Yep.
his drives to his left, trying to attack a closeout look very natural to me. Like that looks
Yeah. The other thing it reminds me of is like, where Siakam went. And Siakam was like I think 23, 22 when he was drafted. A lot of teams missed out on a guy who's now what you can argue about a top 30 player in the league with 35, whatever number you want to pick, right? And So sometimes if you're like, oh, I don't want to take the guy who's older, I mean, we can look at guys who came in older and really, really turned into something special.
Well, we, we had a bigger list here, but we've only got a couple of moments left here. Is there anything you want to shoot out here in passing? You want to talk about the finals for a minute? What's going to happen
Uh,
tonight?
I'm personally going to need Chet to play better defensively. I've not liked what I'm seeing from him physically. Like it's just way too like he's giving up way too much ground to Miles Turner, and that's just not acceptable to me. Because I consider him a much better basketball player than this. So hopefully he plays better. Pacers are hanging tough, but they got an uphill battle. I think everybody knows. See, they have an uphill battle to climb, but they show they can come back on them if the Thunder don't do what they need to do on the offensive side of the floor.
What do you think, Glenn?
Pacers have got to cut off Shay's path better than they did in game two. Cannot let him get to 8 feet, 7 feet, 6 feet on his drive. You got no shot on the step back. So they need to use their second defender, so the next closest defender to take space away from him. But then they have to cover the backside of the play, and that's where they got beat. I mean, OKC ATOs with the back cuts are gold. They got to cover that.
All right. Well, we're literally minutes away from the game, so go watch and enjoy. And good night, Bob.
Good night, Bob.
Bye, Bob.